Okay. Record. Hi everyone. Today we have a lecture on contracts. We will understand what a contract is, the essential elements of a contract, and we will also understand how to draft a contract. For a person who's a beginner level will understand the essential elements of having it in the contract. To begin with, contract is, of course, we are all aware, can be made between two parties or more party. So if there are three parties, it is called a tri-party agreement or a contract. Now, first of all, let us understand what a contract is and how is it made. In a contract, you are supposed to have one offer. So one party makes an offer to the other party. The other party accepts the offer. So proposal or an offer is accepted by the other party, which commits it to a promise being made. This acceptance and this offer, which is being made by both the parties, in between the parties, can be expressed or implied. Now, express, what do we mean by an express offer or an acceptance? Means a written statement by one party and the other party, which is expressly done. When we say implied, implied means any means except writing. So let's say if I give you in writing that I would want to buy some mangoes from you, and in exchange of that, I will give you some amount, let's say 20 kgs mango, and in exchange of that, I will give you 10,000 rupees. That's an offer that I made, and then you accept it. Now, this is your acceptance. This acceptance and offer can be expressed or implied. As per section 10, there are some essential elements of a contract that we should know. But before moving forward, we should also know what is the difference between an agreement or a contract. Most of the people get confused between why do we say it's an agreement? Why do we not say it's a contract? What is the difference between an agreement or a contract? So when we talk about an agreement which becomes enforceable by law, it becomes a contract. Now, talking about the essential elements of a contract, when we see there are a few elements that we will discuss today. Of course, as we said, the first element comes out to be the offer and acceptance. Offer and acceptance is given in section 2D of Indian Contract Act. There has to be an offer and an acceptance by the other party. Next element when we talk about is there must be a valid consideration. So section 25 of Indian Contract Act says that if there is not a valid consideration, there is not a valid contract. When we come to a valid contract, we should also know that there are three types of contracts. There is one valid contract, there is one void contract, and there is voidable contract. Valid contract is the contract which can be enforced by law. Voidable contract can be rescinded by one of the parties, has an option. One party has an option of rescinding the contract. And void contracts are the contracts which cannot be enforced. Example for a void contract can be a wagering contract, a wagering agreement, an agreement which is on a condition that is illegal. For example, betting on a horse is an illegal activity, and such an agreement between the parties cannot be considered as a valid offer acceptance and cannot be enforced by law. Thus, it is not acceptable. Valid contract. Let's say, moving on, if we talk about one of the examples of essential elements that we just discussed, which was offer and acceptance, there was a case law that I would like to discuss here. It's called Lalman Shukla versus Gauridat Neha Mohanty. What happened in this case was there was a servant whose master's nephew was lost. He found nephew, and then after that he realized that there was also an advertisement for finding that nephew. He did not know about it, so there was not an implied or an express acceptance or offer to the contract. When he later on went to the master and asked him for the money, master said, no, I will not pay you, because there was no offer or acceptance. You did it by your own duty. He goes to the court and asks court that he should be paid the remuneration which was given in the advertisement by the master. Court held the opinion here in this matter, stating that of course there was no offer and acceptance unless there is an offer explicitly made. It comes in the knowledge of the person who's accepting it. It will not be considered a valid agreement or a contract. Further, moving on, when we talk about a valid consideration, the valid consideration, it is not considered to be a valid consideration if it is falling under section 25 of Indian Contract Act. It is considered to be a void agreement. Moving on, the third element that we talk about here is parties must be competent to contract. Now, for example, a party which is not competent to contract is a minor. How can a minor enter into an agreement is with the under the guidance of the guardian. Of course, the agreement is enforceable to the minor, but only when there is an agreement with the guardian or with the consent of the minor. The minor also has to be a sound mind. A person who is of unsound mind, or an agreement which is been done with coercion, fraud, forgery, or any such conditions which is illegal or not acceptable in law, cannot be entered into an agreement and cannot be considered a part of a valid agreement. Moving on, when we talk about the fourth element, there should be a free consent of the parties. So we have already spoken about three elements before: offer and acceptance, a valid consideration, and of course, the party must be competent to contract. The fourth element that we talk about is there has to be a free consent. As I said, that the agreement or a contract should not be entered between the parties with any fraud or coercion. So the party must be having complete knowledge of the agreement, and also there should not be any non-consensual agreement of the parties by either of the sides. Last essential of this contract is the object of the contract must be lawful. So when we talk about Section 23 of the Contract Act, the consideration in the contract must be lawful, and an unlawful consideration cannot be accepted to be an agreement which is or a contract which is valid in law. Ishan, are we okay?